Hello everybody, my name is Tom and I'm back to talk to you about Formula One Fantasy. We've just had the Australian Grand Prix and we're going to have a look at the little figures behind all the sparkly champagne that goes on in Formula One. Find out where the value is so far this season after the first three races. I'm going to be looking through my spreadsheet that I have created here, and then we're just going to see where the numbers are taking us. We're going to start off by looking at this front page, which is just kind of a nice summary of all the points per million, so we can see exactly straight face value where the value is, nice and easy. We're going to have a quick look through for some trends set in. We're going to have a quick look at the Bahrain, Jeddah, and Melbourne practice sessions going into qualifying. We're going to have a look at some hypothetical qualifying statistics that I've set up here, and then finally we're going to see how those hypothetical qualifying ends up looking with how easily we can predict qualifying, basically, to help us, decide ahead of the weekend who the best team is. So we'll go back to the main page. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. We're going to start off with the constructors at the top here. You can see all the constructors. I'm not going to go into great detail about points per million per race, etc. I'm going to be very brief with this because it's literally there staring at you in the face. So look at the numbers. Basically, this green column I find most useful, because it condenses the numbers down. Like, rather than just doing points per million straight up, this number's just going to get inflated as the season progresses. Whereas this number is like divided by the number of races that there have been, so you get a per race kind of average. So I really like this green column. It kind of helps to see where the value is, and fairly understandably, the Hazes and the Ferraris are leading the way. Following closely behind is the Alfa Romeos, who are given really good value, 2.3 points per million per race. So yeah, really good. And then this final column here, points per race, so the main chunk is coming from. You can see that the main chunk of points are coming from the top three constructors, as is fully expected, to be honest, because they're going to be most consistently winning, getting podiums. And that's where the main points are. But we want to make sure we're picking up as many points as we can from those lower priced teams if we can. Those are the figures. Look at it, drink it in. We're going to have a look down at the drivers as well. Same story. I like this green column here. It tells you who's providing the most value. Again, Magnussen coming in at 2.6 is on fire. As well as Leclerc at 2.46. So I say 2.46, 2.61. I'm looking at Leclerc and thinking about Magnussen there. Leclerc and Magnussen really leading the way very clearly. Ocon providing supreme value as well for his price. Very, very unfortunate what happened with his teammate this week. I was one of the I think many that went with Alonso in the end after his stonking performances in practice, and he was on such a good lap. Purple middle sector. Could he have got pole, or at least second row or something? I think the second row was definitely obtainable. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty gutted about poor old Alonso this weekend. But that's life. That's fantasy. That's life as a fantasy manager. You got to take it on the chin really and move on. So yeah, Ocon really good at 1.61. So the two drivers that are really interested me this season, if we just scroll this across so you can see some of the other stats over here. Two people that are interested in me are down the bottom here. So the first one I'm going to look at is Alex Albon. He's really intriguing me as a fantasy option. Not only because of his amazing performance in Australia, where he came from 20th and finished in 10th and got a point for Williams, which is, really special drive from Albon there, going nearly the entire race distance on the hard compound tyres. But yeah, Albon is providing really good value. I know it only says 1.3 million points, 1.3, I can't even say this, 1.3 points per million per race, which looks kind of averagey when you look at everyone else. But you have to bear in mind what happened in Australia, where he lost 10 points, fantasy points that is, by disqualification from qualifying. So, because he had the fuel issue, wasn't enough fuel in the tank, similar to what happened to Vettel last year in Hungary. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's go back to his total points and say he had enough fuel, and we'll take that out. We'll add in 38 instead. And suddenly his value, if we ignore the disqualification from qualifying, comes up at 1.76, which is one of the best. In fact, if we have a quick look down, the only people that beat that are Magnussen, Leclerc. Am I missing anyone? I don't think so. So yeah, if we discount that disqualification, in qualifying in Australia, then Albon is actually the third best value driver in the game at the moment. Unfortunately, he did actually get disqualified, so we're going to change that back to 28. So it comes down at 1.3, but very deceptively, I think Albon is a really good pick. He's super cheap at 7.2 million. He's beaten his teammate consistently. He could be a really good alternative to Magnussen if the Hases continue to decline. And I say to continue to decline. Like, they still had kind of okay races in Australia, but it could be this already the beginning of the end for the Has dream. Who knows? So if you're looking for that cheap budget option, then Albon definitely could be the man. Someone else that's interested me down here is Lance Stroll, mainly because even though again he only comes in at 1.22, he's just getting a lot of points for the overtaken. You see here the points gained. This is across the entire season so far. He's got the most amount of points gained from overtaking, and I think that's partly due to the fact he does not qualify particularly well, which we're going to see in a minute. But also due to DNFs ahead of him. But if that continues to happen, if we continue to see reliability issues, then Stroll is looking like a good buy at 9 million. Fairly decent value here at 1.22, and getting all those overtake points. So yeah, I mean, Stroll's someone I definitely got my eye on. So that's the summary very briefly of what's going on so far this season. We're going to have a quick look. We'll have a quick look at Melbourne. I keep saying Melbourne. It's not Melbourne, is it? It's Melbourne. So what we can see in the from Melbourne is FP1, FP2, FP3. I've taken their times. I've discussed this in the previous video. I'm going to very briefly describe what I've done here for anyone who's new to the channel or hasn't seen my previous video. So I've taken all the times from free practice 1, 2, and 3. I've done the same thing in Jeddah. And go back, I've done the same thing in Bahrain, but we're looking here in Melbourne for the second. So I've taken the practice session times, I've averaged them out, and then I've given each driver here in this green column here, I've given them an average position in practice, and then we can sort of try and see where the average position is in practice and compare that to where they actually qualified. So the actual qualification here is here in column I. And then the average position here in column M. So it's kind of interesting to see how they go from the average position in practice to qualifying. So what I've done is I've ranked in this column, column O, I feel like a teacher right now. In column O, we've got the hypothetical qualification positions. And this is based purely on the ranking system of the average position in practice, and I've ranked these. So we look at this column and we've got purely based on the practice sessions where the drivers should line up according to their times. And it's really interesting. I'm going to show you in a minute when we go to this page. You can see exactly how accurate this model is proven to be at the moment. And it's still a bit subjective, and some drivers are a bit of an anomaly, which we're going to see, but it's still really interesting. And just before we go into that, you can also see the positions gained and lost, which is really interesting to see because there are quite a few points up for grabs for positions gained. You can see again Albon here proving his worth here, gaining the 10 points. Again, Lance Stroll, as to why he's kind of appealing despite Aston Martin being kind of sucky at the moment. Getting all those points for gaining the positions due to the DNFs down here, and also just general decent race pace and everything. So yeah, it's good, especially Albon in that Williams doing an amazing job. So let's have a look. If we go over here, so we have a look in Bahrain. So based on, sorry, I'm jumping around here. Based in Bahrain, like I say, average positions in practice, ranked it by giving a hypothetical qualification. We then put that in this page. So we can see here, if we go down the page, we've got Leclerc, hypothetically should be first. He isn't first. Max Verstappen should have been second, isn't second. And you can go down the list, see for yourself. You can see how far out everyone is. And here in this column, I've actually made your life even easier. I put exactly how many positions higher or lower that driver is from hypothetical qualification into the actual qualification. So we're going to see over the course of these 3 races we've had so far, and we're going to average out everything into this little section down here. So things to look out for straight away is that the top guns are pretty easy to predict exactly where they're going to be, like Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, bang on in Bahrain. We look for the top 3 again, and all within 1 or 2 positions. The Sainz again was bang on where he's supposed to be. We go across to Australia. Sainz obviously an anomaly in this situation at -7. That's heavily impacted by the red flag of Alonso's crash, and also the fact that they had a problem starting the car up, so they didn't actually he had cold tyres and he couldn't get the proper lap in Q3, ended up in P9. So I think this is a big old anomaly, and I think it would have been much more accurate, but you have to take that as it is. So yeah, they're looking accurate. Something that's really interesting to me is the Mercedes lads. Russell in Bahrain, you can see according to practice sessions, his practice times were good enough to put him in P4 if he carried that over into qualifying, and he drops it down to P9, so he loses 5 positions here. Let's move across again. We'll have a look at Russell again. So he should have been P10 according to the practice times in Saudi Arabia, and he sticks up in P6. So he's now gained, if we look across here, he's gained 4 positions. So again, he's lost a bunch of positions in Bahrain. He's gained a bunch of positions in Saudi Arabia. And we go to Australia, and where is he? He's predicted 12th. Again, not performing well in practice, and he sticks it in P6. So again, if we go across, he's gained 6 positions from his practice. We have a quick look at Hamilton as well. Hamilton in Bahrain has gained 2 positions. In Saudi Arabia, -8 positions. And Hamilton gained 5 positions. So again, big gains, big losses. And I think I can put this down to the Mercedes just not knowing how to get their car set up at the moment. We all know they've got problems with the porpoising, bouncing around, lack of stability in the car, which is contributing to their lack of speed at the moment. Although they did look stronger in Australia this weekend, which is interesting to note. But I genuinely think that they are just too unpredictable at the moment based on this template of predicting things that I've randomly made up by myself. I think the Mercedes just too unpredictable at this stage in the season because they're chopping and changing their setups. We know from Toto Wolff that Hamilton and Russell in Saudi Arabia both went completely different directions going into qualifying, because the truth is they just didn't really know what was going to work, and that's why Russell gained 4 positions and Hamilton lost 8 positions because of the change in setup. So it's really interesting to see how they've gone jumping around a lot there. Someone else that is kind of interesting, let's have a look. I mean, you can see for yourself, this is just purely my opinion, my subjective opinion reading into what I've set up here. But Stroll again is another interesting one. In Bahrain, he goes from predicted as P12, he drops all the way down to P19. In Saudi Arabia, P12, he drops 3 places. And in Australia, 15, I know he had the crash of Latifi, so it kind of skews that. That's why I haven't got a value in there. It kind of skews that number. But are we seeing that Stroll just can't step up in qualifying, and in which case makes it kind of hard to predict, but also maybe doesn't make it hard to predict? Maybe we can safely say that Stroll will consistently be below his practice positions. Schumacher is someone that strikes me as really consistent. Although he's changed 3 positions here, if you go across, he's changed 2 positions here and he's changed 3 positions here. So that gives him a really consistent. Schumacher in practice going into qualifying is pretty consistently 2 or 3 positions above in qualifying. So again, purely based off 3 races, can we say that Schumacher is easy to predict where he's going to be? Who knows? This is only 3 races. Let's continue this experiment into the season and see where it takes us. But overall, we'll have a quick look down here at the season averages. This peachy column is useful, but I don't think it tells the whole story. This yellow column is where I think is really the important one as to whether this model I'm using is gonna help us predict qualifying or not. So this peachy column is the season average. So this takes into account the positions gained and lost. So you're going to get lots of minus figures and positive figures. So when you're working out the average, you're going to come up with something which doesn't quite tell the whole story. And I'm going to go back to the Mercedes as an example of this. So if we take Hamilton as an example. So according to this, Hamilton's average here is minus 0.3. So you're thinking, it's really close to 0. So if it's close to 0, it must be really accurate. And whilst that's true, we want these numbers to be as close to 0 as possible, because that means that we're spot on with our predictions. This doesn't take into account the fact that there's positive and negative gains and losses, so it kind of cancels it out. So Hamilton's big old gain that he's made, where is he? So 5 positions in Australia and 2 positions in Bahrain. It then gets kind of cancelled out by the big old -8 in Saudi Arabia. So you end up with this kind of figure which doesn't really tell you the story. So I'm not really super happy with this column, so kind of don't pay too much attention to it, but it's still useful to know. But I think the main one to know is this one. So this gets rid of the positions gained or lost, and is purely an accuracy column as to how close. Doesn't matter if they're positive or negative. If they've gained or lost positions, it just tells us how close exactly they are to the actual hypothetical qualifying. I hope I'm not rambling too much. I feel like I'm talking like way too much, but we'll see. So yeah, we can see if we go down, currently, after 3 races, currently Leclerc is very easy to predict where he's going to be. I would argue anyone within sort of 2, anyone up to about 2.5 maybe, is pretty accurate in guessing their position. Past that, then you're looking a little bit inconsistent, and I'm not sure it's going to be super accurate going forward. But at the moment, I can safely say that Leclerc, Verstappen, to some extent Sainz, are pretty easy to predict where they're going to qualify based on practice. Russell and Hamilton are big old anomalies, as we've already discussed. Perez and Bottas, again, pretty easy to predict where they're going to qualify based on these numbers. Let's go further down. This little chunk of people: Alonso, Gasly, Guan Yu, and Magnussen, all within a position or 2 of where they're hypothetically predicted. Lance Stroll, as again I've already discussed, he keeps losing positions going from practice to qualifying, so kind of hard to predict at the moment. And if we continue onwards, everyone else is within 3 positions. In particular, Norris at 0.7, Ricciardo at 0.7, and Latifi at 0.3 seem to be very easy to predict. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. I keep saying that word, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. I find it interesting. I don't know how useful it's going to be going forward, but I'm certainly going to continue the experiment to see if we can see these trends forming. And like I say, even if we're not getting super, if we're getting these deltas, or if we're consistently getting, for example, the Schumacher going up by 2 or 3 spaces each qualifying, as we can see in there, that looks like a pattern that we can definitely follow. So even if the number doesn't quite look that great, we can also follow the patterns. It's not just about the figures. So yeah, that's me finished absolutely rambling my head off. Let me know what you think about this little model I've set up. Do you think it's useful? What are there any pitfalls I'm missing? Is there any way I can improve this? Yeah, and hopefully, like I said, I'm just going to continue doing this each race. It's not actually going to work for Imola, which is the next race along, because it's a sprint race, and we're not going to have the 3 usual practice sessions. So unfortunately, we can't continue that experiment in Imola. But from what we've seen so far, it's looking like, in my opinion, fairly accurate. You can start to see a few patterns emerging, and yeah, I think it's pretty cool just to see. So yeah, that's me summed up. I'm going to sign off because I feel like I've spoken the back legs off a horse, or whatever the expression is. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll be back soon for some more analysis going into Imola. Thanks very much. Bye bye.